Welcome to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.
Hello and welcome to this special episode of Voice Notes Suck. If you're tuning in for the first time, we do recommend having a listen to some of our other episodes, but you don't have to. We've got something a little different for you today, so sit back and enjoy why we love voice notes.
Jay, I made the decision to get this special started, this standalone special episode of Voice Notes Suck, which is going to be called Why We Love Voice Notes, I think, not Special Suck or It's All About Us, which were some of the other potential titles. What are we doing? We're telling our story. So we've done 2 series of Voice Notes Sucks and we've not really explained why or what we're doing or what we want. And I think that's what the plan is for today's episode, for today's special episode, is to tell our story a little bit, to explain the name, explain the format, explain why we're doing this podcast, maybe talk a little bit about what we want, talk about how we think it's gone so far, and maybe even dive a little bit into what the future potentially looks like, or what could the future look like. I think that's the plan. I've got no idea how long this episode will be, but it's Jay and me, so we'll probably find a way to fill out 25 minutes or so.
Well, hello. I'm not sure who this is or how you got my number, but I'll join in. I'll play along. Voice Notes Suck. What is that? A podcast made using voice notes. Why is it called Voice Notes Suck? Because we don't. This is Gizmo just interacting with the podcast. Thank you. I shall return with an answer.
I absolutely love that Gizmo is such a massive part of this episode of Voice Notes Suck. This is fantastic. Do we need to attribute rights? Do we need to add him to the credits or put him in the description? And maybe Gizmo likes voice notes. Maybe that's why he was barking so much.
So my wife and a friend, they use voice notes and they love it. Now, they both leave voice notes that are, some of them are 5 minutes long. For me, that is okay now and again, but if you were to do that like every day, can you imagine leaving a voice note that was 5 minutes long every day? See, I like listening to those voice notes because she's funny, but I think some people just, they're not, and they'd probably just go through the day like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's funny, that little piece of paint on the wall. I've never seen that before. I'm going to take a closer look now. Ooh, that's exciting, isn't it? Wow. Sorry, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, those shoes that I bought yesterday stank.
What you did there is explain why voice notes suck. And the shoes stank. Oh, you make me laugh. You really do. But yeah, you're right. And exactly what you've just said there is one of the reasons people think voice notes suck. And I certainly did before I got accustomed to them. I was like, there'd be a feeling of dread when someone left me a voice note. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to listen to that. And they're going to be chatting about smelly shoes they bought yesterday and bits of paint on the wall. And, do I have to? But there's such a wonderful communication method once you get used to them. Once I got past that barrier, that hurdle, I've really enjoyed using voice notes. And, you know, some of our communication, Jay, some of the ways, like look at some of the things that we've done primarily via voice notes. We've built a podcast via voice notes. That's a thing. Like we're getting close to 750 plays on Spotify and YouTube right now. I mean, what are we? The 7th of January, 2025. And that's all happened via voice note. Well, and a couple of meetings, but pretty much all happened via voice notes.
I mean, it's amazing. For me, it's the fact that you can contemplate your answer a little bit. There's no interruptions on what it is that you're saying, but it also gives you the opportunity to really listen to the other person and what they're saying, which is you, Dave. I listen to your words. They go into my brain. I process them. I spend a couple of minutes digesting it, and then I reply in the way that I know how, which is the way that my brain works, which sometimes might be a bit wonky, and that's okay because nobody's interrupting my train of thought, and then I get there eventually and come out the other side. Sometimes if I'm having a conversation and my brain goes wonky and I get interrupted, that's it, I get completely derailed.
Yeah, the mechanics of having a conversation via voice notes, or the structure of that conversation where you're not interjecting someone else, you're not being interrupted when you're speaking, you're not trying to jump in as soon as there's a pause. I think those mechanics are really, really important and quite unique to what we offer as a podcast. And I think when you see some other conversational podcasts out there, there's a lot of interruptions, there's a lot of interjections, and there will be a lot of thoughts that are lost. And that's something that people aren't going to have with our podcast. If we want to say something, we've got the time, the ability, and the space to say what we want to say.
Not only that as well, Dave, it's taught me to employ this kind of conversation in real life where possible. Become conscious of the amount of time that you're speaking, but more importantly, becoming conscious of the amount of listening that I'm doing to someone who is speaking. And imagine setting guidelines like, I don't know, like standardizing conversations where when you're speaking to another person, you're allowed to speak for at least a minute, but they're not allowed to say anything until you've finished, no matter how hard it is, no matter how difficult it is for them to hold it in, they have to. Otherwise, there's like, I don't know, some kind of penalty, some kind of consequence. They get gunged. It'd be a good game show.
Couple of things, Jay. I find it really fascinating that you've taken some of the lessons learned from this podcast into face-to-face conversations, and that you found a benefit from this method of communication. And whilst I think I'm an active listener, I need to reflect on what you've said and take that into my conversations and make sure that I'm delivering and learning from what we're doing here. The second thing is, now that you've said a game show, I'm going to get so frustrated. If someone else introduces our format and then we're not part of it and then turns it into a game show, that's going to annoy me. So I think you've created an extra thing on our long-term to-do list. And have you ever been frustrated with voice notes? Is there a time when you didn't want to receive a voice note? And did you, when voice notes were first a thing, did you ever think they sucked? I certainly did. I said it in a previous message. I used to be, I didn't want to open them. Like, I didn't like them. And I know plenty of people that feel that way about them now. Are they feelings that you've ever had?
Okay, so I'm not a huge fan of a stranger sending me a voice note. I find that a little bit anxiety inducing, actually. I'm like, oh my, what are they going to say? Why have they sent a voice note? Who is it? It's happened a couple of times on LinkedIn. Now, I am open enough to listen to it and then settle into it and appreciate it usually, because I can sometimes understand why you can fit more into a voice note than you can into some text. If you waffle on, I guess that creates a bit of a problem. If it's a stranger, it needs to be short and sweet. And if they're not monitoring the time that they're speaking, which I always do, then I find that an issue too. Like, I try to keep mine under a minute.
Even if you have to speak really fast to get your message in. But that aside, Jay, and look, you were on times 1.5. I've got no idea how quick you were talking. But the things that you've said would definitely induce anxiety in me as well. And that made me think, would I feel the same anxiety from a voicemail? And yes and no. I guess we're just not used to being introduced to someone via voice note. And they can feel rather personal. They certainly do to me. I do just want to explore a little bit further why we called the podcast Voice Notes Suck. And, you know, being British and quirky and like a little bit tongue in cheek, like we wanted to acknowledge that, or I certainly did. And I can't remember if I suggested the name or you did. It was that long ago. But part of the enticement of this name was that acknowledgement of the uncomfortability that people feel around voice notes.
Yeah, I mean, your voicemail. I'm not a fan of voicemail. Like, if you had to create a podcast using voicemail, that'd be quite fun, actually. You could have a guest leave voicemail, couldn't you? But I'm not a fan of voicemail. I get worried. I'm like, there's a problem. If it was so important that they left a voicemail, something bad has happened, and it starts making me feel sad. And I listen to it, and it's like, you have a new message from 074984721. It says, left today at 13:47.
Hello, it's me. Remember me? I was watching you from down the corridor. Do you remember? When you fell over, you dropped all those eggs. I was watching and found your number. Doot.
Genuinely don't know where to go from there. I hope someone tries that number and finds them. No, do not randomly call the number that Jay said and leave voicemails. Please do not do that. And if you do, I am not taking any responsibility for it whatsoever. So if you've got nothing else to add to why the name, why voice notes suck, Jay, do we want to talk about why the format, which I guess we've kind of done a little bit, but not specifically, or do you want to drill down into why we're doing this and what we want from it?
Well, for me personally, it's an easy way to wander around, recording a response, thinking. I think better when I'm on the move. So this is a good way to do it. I think for me personally, the only issue with it, which makes it a bit of a challenge, is getting it off the phone. Because I have to do it manually. I have to plug a lead into my phone, plug it into my computer, and then actually listen to it in real time. If anything goes wrong, I'm scuppered. But we do get the little ba-ding, which makes it sound like you're actually listening to a voice note conversation. And you wouldn't usually listen to someone's voice note conversation because not that many people have voice note conversations, I don't think. So that's one little niggle for me, but it's worth it. And it's been worth it so far, and it will be worth it. It might be nice to potentially come up with a very similar way without having to do that, but I don't know how to do that yet. What about you?
I think that's something we can work out at some point. And again, it's something that we can deal with, that we can manage. And it would be nicer for it to be easier. But considering the format means that we don't have very much editing to do, that we don't have to cut notes, that we don't have to do various post-production things, kind of balances that out. I think that was one of the key reasons for recording this via voice notes, was to try and cut down post-production work. You know, we're both doing this in our spare time. I also think the other thing that happens, or that's happened from it, and I think we both thought this would be the case, but we didn't know it until we put it out there. But it's almost like the conversations are happening in real time. And certainly for our audience, and certainly when I listen back to them, that's how I feel. Like the conversation's happening right now, even though it was recorded months ago and possibly over the duration of a couple of weeks, it doesn't feel like that. And I think that's massively important. Well, it is for me anyway.
Just to get to your point about post-editing, there are a couple of quirks with WhatsApp that I've run into over these last few series. And if I listen to a conversation and for whatever reason, I stop a voice note halfway through, but then carry on listening to the rest as we record and When I go back to the beginning and play them in order, and it's like going through its thing, if that particular voice note was stopped halfway through or not quite at the beginning or whatever, then it starts at that point. So I have to pretty much listen to every single episode again when I'm copying it. And if that happens, I have to pause it. Well, you know, I stop the WhatsApp, drag the slider to the beginning and hope, cross my fingers that it plays from the beginning, because sometimes it doesn't. And I have had to do that quite a lot. But you didn't know that until now.
I am aware of that, but not because of what you said. I'm aware of that because when we summarise the episodes, I listen back to them, and I have to do that. And I learned quite quickly that if I move the little cursor back to the beginning of all of the messages, it stops one playing halfway through and me losing my track. So yeah, I think what I meant about post-production, I know what I meant about post-production. I know you do the majority of it. But what I meant is that we're not splicing together, you know, scenes from different cameras. We're not cutting out bits where we're like, I don't know what I'm saying. You know, we're not taking out all the rubbish and junk. Like, the conversations happen as naturally as they can happen via voice notes, I feel. And the end product is also that as well. So yeah, that's what I meant by post-production, rather than there's no work required. That's not what I meant to say at all.
No, I understand. I fully understand your point of view. I understand what you're saying. Do you think people would be interested in learning about what happens after the voice notes have been done, like on our phones?
I guess we'll find out when we get feedback on this episode. I mean, we've given some insight into it, and I've talked about it in the past when I've been asked about Voice Notes Suck. And we really do appreciate some of the support from people. Well, we really do appreciate all of the support from people, but some people are more vocal about being involved, about offering suggestions, about asking questions. Like, this special episode has come about because of John, Dork Love Sports. For those that don't know him, go check him out. Go have a look at his website, dorklovesports.com. But this episode happened this episode has happened because he was like, you haven't told anyone why. You have just put content out there. And I'm like, that's a really good point, John. So I think that's part of why I wanted to do this episode, why I wanted to do this special, is to give people a little bit of insight into why and what happens and how it happens.
Thinks he's well hard, doesn't he, that John? Well hard.
Yeah, you can just see him being a geezer walking down the street in a tank top with Cantor Stella. Look, very much for our British audience, those couple of comments.
With a tattoo of the British flag on his calf. That's how it rolls. That's what happened when he made this suggestion. That's exactly what happened. I think it's a good suggestion, to be honest. I do. And I do love that man. He's a lovely, lovely man. But yeah, the why is always subjective anyway. And I feel like people will still, even after listening to this, people will still most likely think that we've done it for a different reason.
We can't control that though, Jay. We can just go out there, put our message out, tell people what we think, and then it's up to them to decide if we're genuine and authentic or not. Like, I don't need their validation either, just to let you know. It's completely on them how they take what content we put out there. And I wouldn't want it any other way.
No, me neither. I mean, the one thing that I feel is the most important part about all of this that we're doing is the fact that we don't have any answers. We've had this conversation, haven't we? There's podcasts out there where they seem to claim to be some authority on things. And how can you be an authority on things? Especially if you're wrong. That's the worst thing. And then you're not accountable if you're wrong. You know, what do you do? Record another podcast apologising for being wrong. What a waste of time. The thing I love about what we're doing and the thing about Voice Notes Suck is the fact that we ask questions. We don't have any answers. That's the whole point. We want to learn about the world. We want to learn about society. We want to learn about people and attitudes and technology and all those things. And we can't do that without asking questions. And I hope that that sparks questions in other people's minds. And I hope that it sparks questions with other people who are making podcasts as well.
I may not have been overly articulate about this when we started, but it was definitely one of my things. And I think you're aware of this. But, you know, so many podcasts do exactly what you said. They assume to be the authority on things, and they're not. They're just a person with an opinion. You know, the vast majority of everything is an opinion, which is built on your perspective and your experience. And that's not everyone else's perspective or experience. And you know, what right have we got to tell other people how to think or what they should question or what they shouldn't question? I want people to be encouraged to think, to question, to challenge, and not just the narrative, not just the populist or the popular movements that are happening at the time, but also themselves, and to be comfortable challenging themselves and their friends and their family, and being able to come to conclusions that are based on questions and answers and knowledge, rather than what someone else has told you from a position of authority or from a position of influence.
Wait a minute, Dave. Wait a minute. Are we encouraging people to question authority?
So yes, questioning authority is important. I think understanding your position regarding that authority, and in certain places of the world that questioning authority could mean that you end up in a worse position than maybe if you questioned authority in other places of the world. I think having that recognition is important. But if we don't question everything, then we just have a status quo. Nothing changes, everything remains the same, and we don't have modern medicine. We don't have modern scientific theories. If we don't ask questions of what the status quo is, that developments never happen. We don't get the wondrous technology that we've got today. So yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. We need to question, and that includes questioning authority.
You don't even need to do that overtly, do you? Though that could be an internal process. You could question why something may be the way it is. You could question why someone is in the position that they're in, and then that would essentially influence your own mindset and push you through the world on a different path, I suppose. Maybe even avoiding those positions of authority.
Such valid points, Jay, and I really appreciate them. It's easy to think that questioning narratives or questioning the norm means shouting at people with a megaphone, and it doesn't. It means having these sorts of conversations. It means critically thinking. It means being aware that you're not always right. And I think questioning is so important to me for a couple of reasons. When I was a kid, I questioned everything, to the point where I annoyed, all of the adults around me. And as I'm now an adult, or as an adult in recent years, we've seen what happens to, or some of the problems that come from people just being within their own echo chambers and never questioning anything. So that ability to critically think, to challenge ourselves, to challenge each other, is definitely what I want to do with this podcast. Is there anything else that you want to achieve with it other than that? Because I know you feel similarly about encouraging people to question things. But yeah, is there any other values that you think Voice Note Suck has?
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? That's my brain going ding ding. Is there anything else I want to achieve with this podcast? I've always found that the greatest source of learning is intimacy, whether that's the intimacy of someone's thoughts, the intimacy of relationships, physical intimacy, mental intimacy, creative intimacy. What happens with that for me is that insight is everyone's insight, really. We all have something inside us that we keep within, and I think we're kind of courageous, really, for doing this, because we don't hold back. We wear our hearts on our sleeves. We're essentially talking to each other like we would do on a day-to-day basis, but sharing it with others. So I guess I hope people feel inspired by what we're saying, at least to go out and try something different. What about you?
So the domestic noises are making me smile, Jay. We've had an alarm just then. We had Gizmo right at the beginning. I wonder if we're going to be treated to any others. We are creeping past 25 minutes. We're flying past 25 minutes, but that's not a problem. Specials are often longer, aren't they? And there's a couple of other things that I do want to talk about. I think for me, it's more about how we challenge and how we ask questions and showing people that we can disagree about topics that are big, that we can discuss big topics that are quote unquote controversial, that we can have different opinions, that we can disagree, that we can question each other. And at the end of it, that we can remain fast friends, that our relationship isn't damaged by those discussions. And if we can set that example and put it out there, then that's a huge win for me. The other thing is that I think everyone should hear my voice and everyone needs to know what I'm thinking, like, because I'm really, really important. And no, I don't think that. I appreciate that people are willing to listen to us, Jay, and that we're getting feedback from many people, and we'll name some before the end of this episode. But we're getting feedback from many people that tell me that we're doing what we've just spoken about, like we're achieving those goals, which is exciting and validating.
Those people, Dave, are wonderful people, because anyone who's prepared to give you feedback, especially if you ask for it, is a gem in my book. That's how we grow, in it. That's how we build things and shape things and grow together, you know. And it's funny, innit? Like, I love what we're doing, particularly because it's a relaxed form for me. It's relaxed. It lets me flex some of my more experimental, creative explorations. So, you know, like with our logo and with the characters and stuff, like generated the logo with AI, tweaked it, did a few things with the characters. I've redrawn parts of the characters, and now I'm gonna animate them if I can, just to experiment and see how we can integrate that AI workflow into what we're doing. And it's been a massive help for us, hasn't it? AI, it's really helped us a lot. Not that we've produced content using AI specifically, but it's just been a really, really useful tool and a really good assistant for us to put this together, because we don't have a producer, do we? Our producer has been ChatGPT, hasn't it?
Yeah, ChatGPT is our producer. Do we need to say that when we're putting episodes out? Does it need to go on the credits? I don't think it does, and I am very, very grateful, and also, like you, very open about what AI does to support us, to support our growth, to help us be able to deliver our podcast in an effective manner. I mean, if we didn't have this production help from AI, then I'm not sure this podcast would have happened due to the time and effort required. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful for it. I'm excited to use it. I'm excited to get it involved in other aspects, in planning, in promotion, and helping us grow, where we should go, what platforms we should potentially use, what it thinks of what we're doing. Like, I love the feedback and the support that's offered from AI, large language models, primarily ChatGPT. I think the thing that excites me most of all about what we're doing, or the thing that I enjoy most of all, maybe the better way to say it, is being challenged and being able to work through my thoughts in the moment and to share that with other people. Like, I've always enjoyed that, and the debate structure, if you like, and to be able to share my thought process a little bit with other people as it happens is something that I enjoy doing.
Me too, Dave. And it's easy to feel scared, isn't it, when people are being really down on AI and, oh, AI makes you a bad person and you shouldn't be using AI for this and that. And personally, I do not care if someone doesn't like AI. That is none of my business. And if they won't listen to our podcast because we use a little bit of AI to promote it, and we've used AI to help us structure it and get feedback and stuff, if they won't listen to it because of that, then they are literally just not our people, and it doesn't matter, does it? They're missing out. They are missing out on a treat. And personally, I just do what I want now anyway. I mean, I'm 45 as of this recording, and I just don't care what people think about me anymore, dude. Like, genuinely, whatever they think of me is none of my business.
Exactly, Jay. It's none of my goddamn business what someone else thinks about me. And whenever I get in my own head about what people may think about me or about what expectations others may or may not have of me, like that's a mantra, and it came from you. It's none of my goddamn business. Where else do we go from here? Oh, I guess we should talk a little bit about time limits, about why we want to have quite short episodes, and about, I mean, we've spoken briefly about, you know, the actual voice notes being limited to 90 seconds, and you said that you aim to not leave a voice note longer than 60 seconds at any point. But do you think we should tell people why we decided on those two things, on having quite a short period of time for messages, for leaving voice notes, and wanting to have quite a short episode time as well?
I mean, it's all about the rhythm and pace for me. You know, we've had feedback saying that our voices contrast so well that the short amount of time that we're each talking really keeps your attention, and I'd have to agree on that one. And I think keeping the episode short is good for our content and trying to get in all the things that we can in a short space of time, which also matters. You can go on too much, can't you? You can just waffle on and on and on. I don't know. I don't mean you. I mean, one could waffle on if the episode was far too long. Bibbly bong!
Yeah, I agree with the rhythm and pace aspect for sure, and it's something that we spoke about early on. We didn't want an episode that went on for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, where the importance of the message and the topic that we wanted to discuss got lost in the nothingness of meaningless words. And I've definitely been known to ramble, even in our podcast. You know, I've been known to ramble, or in our previous episodes might be the better way to say it. I've been known to lose track of what I'm saying and maybe say something that isn't as relevant as it should be. So yeah, I think fast-paced, to the point, keeping people, our audience, engaged and interested in the topic that we're discussing, and not veering too much from the topic. I think having that 20-25 minute episode length, is that right? 25-minute episode length. Yeah, that makes sense. Having that in place allows us, or keeps us focused on the point at hand, and stops us from getting too distracted and going down too many side channels.
I mean, you could be talking about me rambling there, Dave, to be honest, and going off topic. I go off topic more than you, definitely. You bring us back on topic quite often. I'm the one who goes off on weird little imaginary tangents, because that's what my brain does. It just goes, here you go. Here's a new idea. It's happening now. Here's a new idea in a box. Open the box, Jay. Open the box. What's inside? And then everything goes awry, and you pull it back, which I'm always very grateful for, Dave, I have to add.
So don't get me wrong, Jay. I love a distraction and an excursion off the beaten track as much as the next person. The shiny thing over there, let's go and look at it. Let's go and talk about it. And I think it's a really important part of every conversation, or any conversation, for it to capture imagination. I feel those tangents are really important. At the same time, I'm acutely aware that we've given ourselves a short time frame, that we don't want to be going on too long during our episodes. This one's a little bit different, but during our normal episodes, we don't want to be going on too long. And that we're talking about a topic within a subject that we want to talk about as well. So it's important to be on track. Yeah, it's interesting how we manage that. And I feel like you do it as much as I do it. So maybe I'm not active listening to our podcast as much as I should do.
You appear to be attentive. Do you mean when you're not listening, do you mean just not listening to my voice notes and just guessing what I'm saying and then replying, hoping it's the right answer?
No, Jay, that's not what I meant. I can understand why you might think I meant that, but that's not what I meant. I meant when it's played back, when I summarize, or we summarize, I should say, or when the episode's released. Maybe I'm not listening as much as I should be to what's actually being said and just enjoying the flow of the conversation. In regards to, sorry, I just had another thought. Can you imagine if we weren't listening to each other's voice notes and we were just populating random voice notes and coming out with content that this was coherent? That would be quite special. But back to bringing us on track, there are a couple of other things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about our stats to date, our stats so far. It's the 20th of January, and if I share the stats on another day, I'll give the date on the day that we share stats. And I also want to celebrate some of the people that have supported us and celebrated us. Before we do that, is there anything else that you want to talk about or anything else that you want to discuss?
I know. Leopards really, really do that, don't they, in the wild? Oh, it's crazy.
The first time I listened to your last message, genuine bewilderment. Wish I could have shared my face, but you would have needed to have seen it in the moment. Yeah, fair play. Hats off. That's all I can say.
Back to your question, Dave. Literally between leaving my response to you wanting to do that role play thing in the jungle to now, I've actually managed to eat a sticky rib pot noodle.
I do not like pot noodles. I've never liked pot noodles. They're a little bit like ramen for people listening around the rest of the world, not from the UK. Pretty sure pot noodles is a UK only thing. Anyway, pot noodle aside, I'm beginning to understand why our episode lengths are 25 to 30 minutes. It's to stop this. This is why we keep our message lengths below 90 seconds. And this is why we keep our episode lengths below 30 minutes, ideally 25 minutes. This reason right here.
Well, hidden in my message was really the enjoyment of being able to formulate a response. I feel like in conversations, and I really hope it inspires conversations, more conversations like this, in regards to the mechanics of a conversation, is just to give some space. Like, it's got space. Our conversation has space. You can formulate a response. You know, I mean, my response to you now was, I don't know, 30 seconds. But 30 seconds in a face-to-face conversation is quite a considerable gap. It's quite an amount of time. So you probably wouldn't do that in a live scenario, or would you? Silence is so contemplative. It gives you so much opportunity to pull the answer from somewhere and speak in a more focused way. Don't you agree? Or do you agree? Or do you not agree or not agree and agree?
Silences are an interesting one, Jay, because in normal conversations, people see silence as an opportunity to interject or to fill the gaps. And I think that's why a lot of society isn't comfortable with pauses in their speech. And we use filler words. Whereas actually it's okay to stop and to think about what you're saying next in a sentence pattern. You don't need to fill that gap with like or are or any of those kind of words. And I think what you said about sort of tangents and the flow of the conversations via voice notes is, we've spoken about it a couple of times in this chat. You know, I just said that I think a proper conversation has tangents, has sidetracks, and has space for it and has room for it. And I think we allow that with the formatting, with the way we format our podcast and with the rules that we've implemented, we allow that to happen naturally. And that's a really, really positive thing.
So I'm going to ask a big question right now, Dave. Do you think and feel, and I'm basing this on feedback that I've heard from numerous unconnected people, do you feel that we have set a bit of a precedent for a new format of podcast in regards to the way that it's recorded and presented?
Oh, Jay, that's a massive question. That's an absolutely huge question. I had to look up precedent to make sure that I was responding correctly, but it means an earlier event or action that is regarded as an example or guide to be considered in subsequent similar circumstances. Now, what I was going to say is that we've built the framework or laid the foundations, and I guess that's kind of the same thing. It's just whether other people, what makes it a precedent or not, is whether other people pick up and run with this format.
You see, we've had this conversation about podcasts going on tour, haven't we? Because people do podcasts, so they do them live. And we were like, how would that work with our format? And we've both decided on quite a particular setup. And without giving too much away, it does pop into my head quite often how fun and a little bit wonky that would be for a live audience.
So there may be Twitter Spaces or X Spaces where I talked about it a little bit if people are desperate to find more information, but they're going to have to trawl through my X Spaces. I couldn't tell you which one it was. And yeah, it does sound fun, doesn't it? The thing is, Jay, we'll get to test that. And this is another thing we've spoken about, is having a community page with, paid members and unpaid members, and paid members maybe having the opportunity to get involved after a show. For example, we'd be able to have a similar format there as well. And look, we're a moment away from these things. We're well aware of it, but they're definitely things that are on our long-term radar, and they're definitely things that we're considering and thinking about as we build out this podcast.
But that's another reason why, on a personal level, I love Voice Notes Suck, is that it's given us a doorway. It's given us an opportunity, a window of opportunity, I might add, based on my experience, to do these things and to explore new lands and new thingies. I was going to go into a Star Trek monologue then and couldn't actually do it. Can you do a Star Trek monologue?
I have never tried that. We are taking Voice Notes Suck into new frontiers, into new unexplored territories of the vastness of the universe. I'm not sure I can do the Star Trek monologue. I think I'd need practice. I probably could do it with some practice, I reckon. But yeah, that's all you're getting from me for now. And I'm with you, Jay. I think it's really exciting. I'm loving the exploration and working out the processes and just the doing nature of it, and everything being slightly new and slightly exciting. And maybe it becomes repetitive and not as new and exciting at some point, but right now it's still really new and exciting, and I'm really, really enjoying it. We're recording series 3 alongside this, and that's something that I'm enjoying. Excuse me. And yeah, I mean, I'm just enjoying so much of it. I haven't counted how long we've been chatting for here. I should probably do that at some point soon. And I definitely want to talk about stats. I mean, we've kind of bounced about, and we've spoken a little bit about what we want to do. We've spoken a little bit in places about our format. We've had a lot of fun recording this. There's been plenty of smiles. But I definitely want to talk a little bit about how it's gone so far before we close this one down. So, Jay, I know I'm breaking our rules. I'm leaving 2 messages in a row, and I'm going to go well over 90 seconds with this message and the last message combined. However, we've been talking for over 40 minutes already, and I want to talk about some stats, and I want to get this episode, this special episode, wrapped up, if at all possible. I think we've covered off a lot of what we wanted to chat about, and I need to listen to it back. Anyway, stats. Stop getting distracted, Dave. So, we are pretty much on YouTube and Spotify. There's some other channels available, but that's where we've been focusing our attention. We have got 16 episodes, and then we've got 2 animated shorts. We have been streamed, listened to, or watched over 850 times for over 100 hours total watch time now. And we've just hit 100 followers and subscribers when you add up both Spotify and YouTube. And I'm buzzing for those stats, absolutely buzzing for them. I know stats isn't something you massively focus on, but how do you feel about those numbers? How do those numbers make you feel? That's the same question, just asked differently.
I don't know. When you were telling me them just then, they sounded very exciting, so I was excited by that. I don't fully know what it means. The numbers game for me is not particularly strong. My brain can't interpret numbers and things properly. I have to maybe see a graph or just appreciate the feedback that comes along. That's the biggest thing for me. Feedback is the biggest thing for me. If people are enjoying it, if people are getting something out of it, if we're getting something out of it, then for me that's like massively winning. Like that's a huge win. That's beyond winning. That's a cause for celebration, in my opinion. So those numbers that you said, which I can't remember any of them, I'll listen to it again, do sound really, really good. And hopefully they'll just increase as time goes on.
I know what you mean about seeing them. The analytics pages on Spotify and YouTube are interesting to look at, and they give you some graphs to help you visualize those numbers. The way I think about over 100 hours of listen time, and this is the sort of key stat for me, but over 100 hours of listen time is over 4 days. Like our podcast, our little voice note podcast, completely random idea, has a combined listen time of over 4 whole days. Like that's the thing that blows my mind, that absolutely astounds me. And the feedback from so many people, some of whom I want to mention before this episode is out or before this special is finished. But yeah, the feedback makes a massive difference. But yeah, the standout stat for me, considering all of the promotion's been very organic and we've not focused a ton of time on this, is that we've been listened to for over 100 hours. I have said that several times in this specific voice note, but that's because it excites me and it makes me smile.
Well, it's a massive, massive achievement, really. And it makes me feel very grateful that people are prepared to give it the time that we've put into it, I suppose. And I mean, I want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank Rob, who gave some of the first feedback when I was telling him about the idea as well initially, and he found it very original, and I do respect his opinion a lot. So thank you, Rob, from All Hail Hyena and Ashworth House Audio, a fantastic songwriter and producer. And I want to thank Martin Crabtree as well, who also thinks it's a fantastic idea, and he's put it to some people where it works, and they may even be going to do a similar thing to help people with the mental health, to communicate in a more relaxed way. How good is that?
Yes, thanking people, Jay. It's something that I wanted to do on this episode. I mean, I've got a long list of people that have supported, shown support, some more than others. Like Songs of Eden and Prism have been huge, alongside John, who I mentioned earlier in this episode. And we've got loads of other people that have just been really supportive on X and offered good, constructive feedback. NFT Eve, Vans, VDK, Shane, Twan, Dejaneer, Metal, Sailflowers, Lexi. I think if I captured everyone that I wanted to. I said NFT Eve. Did I say Bram? Bram from the Mumsles has been awesome. Ice from Pixel. So there's just so many people that have offered constructive, useful feedback, validation, and all sorts of other things. And obviously without them, who I consider to be our fans and supporters, without them we wouldn't have what we've got. So not only am I very, very appreciative of their support and feedback, I'm also incredibly appreciative of them listening and of them pushing our podcast along. I've probably missed some people, and I'm going to feel terrible when I think of them. However, it is what it is. I think we need some final thoughts, Jay, maybe from both of us, and then this special is probably done.
Final thoughts, Dave. That's a nice list of people. I got all the warm and fuzzies hearing those names. Don't worry about people you've missed off. If they're upset about it, then that's not your problem, is it, Dave? I think my final thoughts would be that it just goes to show that doing things on your own isn't real. It takes everyone, really, to make things move forward and be successful. And at the very least, make a little difference to the world somewhere, you know, even if it's just sharing something or just liking something, us providing just a tiny little bit of feedback. It just proves that it takes lots of people to make something work, and I'm always grateful for that, and I always have to remind myself of that, and I do that every day.
Jay, your final thoughts were awesome, and I don't think I want to add anything to it from a final thought perspective. I feel like I've said everything I want to say in this special, the first Voice Note Suck special, Why We Love Voice Notes. And maybe just a final thank you to anyone that's listened now or in the future, to anyone that's shared our content, interacted, engaged with us now or in the future. It makes a huge difference. It helps us immeasurably, and we're both insanely grateful for it. And a thank you for you, Jay. A huge thank you for trusting me and wanting to explore this and put out a podcast in a completely new format that people aren't used to. That level of trust, and it just means a lot. And I'm thankful and grateful that I'm doing this with you and exploring this and having all of the fun whilst we're doing it. And obviously we're recording series 3 as we chat. So this isn't the end for Voice Notes Suck. Some might say it's just the beginning. Should do the socials thing, really, shouldn't I? Please do go and make sure you're following us on Spotify, you're subscribing on YouTube. If you get the opportunity to leave a like, to leave a review on Spotify, to drop a comment in the videos on YouTube, or even a comment in the replies on Spotify, it would be massively appreciated, and it does make a huge difference to us. Other than that, thank you for listening to Voice Notes Suck, Why We Love Voice Notes, our first ever special. Jay's been Jay, I've been Dave. Until next time.
You've been listening to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.